Dr. Hockaday's story begins in North Carolina. After earning her degree at Pitt, she joined the armed forces and then went on to have a career in law enforcement. There, she became the first female commander of 2 different units.
Monica and I connected when she was an outstanding student athlete at Pitt in the early 1990s. She is a veteran who served our country. She is a scholar, she is a leader, and she is a mom.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Panther Legacies. My name is Monica McNeil, and I'm a senior track and field student athlete. And it is my honor to introduce our guest, Forever Panther, Dr. Monica Hockaday. Dr. Hockaday's story begins in North Carolina. After earning her degree at Pitt, she joined the armed forces and then went on to have a career in law enforcement. There, she became the first female commander in 2 different units. She has been in law enforcement for nearly 20 years and currently works and resides in the DC area. Dr. Hockaday is a 2021 Pitt Awardee of Distinction. Welcome, Dr. Hockaday, and thank you, Donna Santh, my Apprentice to Pro mentor, for serving as our moderator today. We hope you all enjoy the conversation. Hail to Pitt.
Hail to Pitt, Monica. Thanks so much for the introduction. We appreciate it. I'm so happy and so honored to be here with Dr. Monica Hockaday tonight to have a conversation. Monica and I connected when she was an outstanding student athlete at Pitt in the early 1990s. As Monica McNeil said, she is a veteran who served our country. She is a trailblazing law enforcement officer who protects communities. She is a scholar, she is a leader, and she is a mom. Monica, we're all so proud of everything you've accomplished in your life. And we have so much to talk about tonight. So let's start at the very beginning. Monica, tell us a little bit about where you came from, your growing up, your family, and how you made your progress into becoming such a great scholar and a great athlete.
Well, thank you, Donna. First, I would like to say thanks for having me. And I am honored just to be able to sit down and have a conversation with you and be considered one of the Pitt Legacies. I started in North Carolina in the 8th grade with several members of the Durham Striders Track Club. When I first started running, I kind of fell into it. It was something that a lot of my friends were doing. So I said, why not let me try it? So unbeknownst to me, I just realized that even getting together and doing something that a lot of my friends was doing, it was something that I enjoyed doing. And I saw that I was actually pretty good at it. So I started at Houghton Middle School running track. From there, I went to Hillside High School, which is in Durham, North Carolina. And I was able to be coached by the coach, Russell E. Blunt. He was a legend coach in North Carolina. I was able to also participate in track and field with Elbert Ellis, which was one of the reasons that I ended up going to Pitt. And I just it fell on me. It just was something that I think, and I mentioned it in lots of conversations, that I feel as though like things happen for a reason. I think that it was something that from my spiritual background, it really led me into track and field. But just to even go back a little bit further, I was raised in Durham, North Carolina, but I was born in Warren County, North Carolina. I'm the number 16th child out of 17. I was adopted and was raised by an adopted family. My family wasn't very educated. Like down in the South, and they were born in like the early 1900s, so they didn't work per se. My father was a sharecropper from the information that I received. My mother really worked at home. Didn't have an opportunity to finish any type of education, pretty much, I think, maybe high school, if I'm correct, from the information I received from other family members. Even though that was the case, education was something that was always pushed, and it was always given to me, like said, you have to get education. That's the best thing for you, get an education. And even though they didn't know maybe the next steps to what the education was, they just pushed it. And it just seems like, I guess, God just kind of ordered the steps for people to be in my life to help me get to that next step, which helped me get to Pitt.
Yeah, that's great. That's a real blessing that your family made education such a big priority for you. And and as we talk, we're going to see how that kind of has been the case throughout your entire life and how you've pursued higher education. So as you were getting ready to graduate from high school, how did you come to make the decision to attend Pitt? How did that happen?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, I ran with the Durham Striders Track Club, and there's a lot of individuals from the whole all of North Carolina that would come and train in Durham with the Durham Striders Track Club. So two individuals that were on my team, one was Lee McCrae, who I kind of knew of because he was gone by the time I started running. He ended up going to Pitt. He played football and ran track there. And then Everett Ellis, he was closer to me. He was only like 2 years ahead of me. So once they went there, it was just one of those things. Like, I mean, I knew both of them were good athletes. So if they're going to Pitt, I should go to Pitt.
They were both great, really great athletes. I remember them both very well. So tell us about your days on the Pitt campus, Monica. We know you were an exceptional athlete. After all, you did earn NCAA All-American status in the 4x400 relay. And by the way, with the time that is still ranked number 3 on the Pitt all-time list after 30 years. Wow. So you guys had a heck of a relay team going. And you mentioned Clarissa Dudley, one of your teammates. I know you had some really amazing teammates at that time. Yes. So talk a little bit about your time on the Pitt track team and also at Pitt as a student.
Yes. Well, the track team was more like an extension family. It kind of reminded me of home once I got there, and I can see why Lee McCrae and Everett Ellis actually went to Pitt. It was more of like a family atmosphere. At the time, Coach Steve Lewis was the coach, and he knew Coach Russell E. Blunt. So it was something that we kind of knew if Coach Blunt okayed this individual and this school, it was going to be a good place to be. So at Pitt, I just enjoyed it. It was like a family. I remember going like the first day the first week really when you came in for training, and we all used to go to Coach Lewis' house. So it was kind of like a rites of passage. Like you knew who the upperclassmen, upper class women were, and who the underclassmen, underclass women were, because you could tell where everyone would sit at. Like, so it was kind of, you couldn't wait to be upperclassmen. So, you could actually sit in a certain area of his house. So it was just something that you knew if you needed anything, or if you had any issues, that you had teammates that you could talk to while you were there. So in Pitt, to me, coming from North Carolina, I remember just all the hills, and even though we got snow in North Carolina, it wasn't like snow in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. You got to be sturdy. You got to be sturdy to make it through the winters in Pittsburgh. And even when outdoor track season starts,
yes,
it still is a little challenging with the weather, right?
Absolutely, yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. Yeah. I just remember walking up the hill to the track. I know it's that facility is gone now, but I just remember walking up to the field and going to the track and just going to the training room and going to just the study hall. Jan, I remember Jan was one of the individuals there that I talked to all the time, and that always helped me with my studies. And she was someone that I pretty much lived there.
Yeah, that's great. Well, you were smart to take advantage of any of the support that you could get, because track is year round. I mean, the track kids are traveling all the time. Absolutely. So you really need that support if you're going to, accomplish what you want to accomplish academically. And I know that you were a great student majoring in political science, and you took tough courses, so you could use that support. That was great. Tell me about being an All-American. Tell me about the NCAA championship when you guys did so well. It had to be exciting.
Oh, it was. I mean, like you mentioned, track is like something that, just like other sports, but definitely at a school like Pitt, you have to manage your time. It's not something that you just can say, I'm going to do track and then I'm going to go do classes. You have to manage your time, because again, you're traveling and you're coming back right into classes. And then you're also just making sure that you're doing well in those classes, because that was another thing that the athletic department and Coach Steve Lewis stressed. They wanted you to do well. It wasn't just going in to be an athlete. It was they're going to be a true student athlete. So that definitely was something that we had to really focus on. So the All-American portion, we trained very hard for that. And it was just like fate, because the year we became All-Americans, it was back in my hometown of Durham. We were at Duke University that year.
Oh, no kidding. Wow. How exciting was that?
Yes.
That's amazing.
So
very good.
I was thinking, and I remember like the track team always get us mixed up, like the individuals that were on that 4x4, but it was actually Clarissa Dudley was on the team, Ronnie's Crumpler, Keisha DeMoss, and myself. So I was honored to be on the team with those ladies, because they were all just good athletes and good students overall. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a tradition in Pitt track of individuals who excel on the track and also excel academically and as citizens. I mean, it's a really wonderful culture, and it's still that way in Pitt track. It's a great culture that we have in track at the University of Pittsburgh. So then tell me, after you graduated from Pitt, you enlisted in the Air Force.
Yes.
And thank you so much for your service, Monica. Tell us what led you to enlist in the Air Force, and tell us about your time serving our country.
Well, to me, it was that same structure that I had saw at Pitt, that type of structure of just, you had a schedule and you had to stick to it. You had to know how to multitask your time. You had to know how to be able to work and do other things. So it was just like an automatic fit for me just to transition from the University of Pittsburgh over to the Armed Forces services. And I had opportunity to run there too. So it was still like a continuation of me being at Pitt, just being in the Armed Forces. So it was something that at the time, you really kind of take for granted. But when I look back, I'm just thankful and amazed that it was something that I had opportunity to do.
So I think that you mentioned that you were able to travel internationally to compete in an all armed services type of Olympic game type of atmosphere with big opening ceremonies and competing against a lot of people from all over the world.
Yes. Yeah, that was in 1995. And it, ironically, it was the first, we called it the CISM. It was the first International Military Olympics ever. And it was individuals from all over the world that were there competing. So it was like you mentioned, an open ceremony. We had an opportunity to walk in uniform, walk in with the American flag. We had an opportunity to represent the United States and represent it well, like in every sport you can think of, it was there.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So after the military, then you served as a police officer in Northern California. And then you came into the East and you served as a police officer in the Washington, D.C. area and Maryland and Virginia.
Yes.
So there you blazed trails for women in law enforcement as the first woman to serve as the anti-terrorism team commander for a Washington, D.C. area police agency and department. Can you talk about those experiences and any challenges you had to overcome? I'm sure there were many.
Yes. Yeah. The anti-terrorism team was a team. We had 20 members at the time when I was able to become the first commander there of that unit. It was a unit that kind of looked at explosive devices to make sure like anyone wasn't bringing anything into our area where we worked. It was a unit that would go out and do like security, like checks to make sure nobody was placing any suspicious items or devices there. And as you mentioned, as a woman commander of a unit, it was kind of challenging at first, but just having an opportunity to make myself available to the individuals in the unit and having conversations with them, I saw that it made it a lot easier. And I found, and just in many opportunities, just not with the anti-terrorism team, but as the first commander of the explosive ordnance device team, K9 unit as well, which is kind of similar to what the anti-terrorism team did, with the exception of, of course, they have dogs that they kind of go out and do the same thing, make sure that they sniff out packages or explosive devices. And then some of those individuals are able to, like, what we call render them safe. So I found just even, and there were no women in that unit with the EOD K9, except for myself as a commander. But I found that it's just so much easier just to be yourself and make yourself available to individuals and give yourself an opportunity to just let your guard down and have conversations, and they get a chance to let their guard down and have conversations with you. It made it a lot easier for me to be able to work with those individuals and just kind of run that unit from a perspective of just leadership and not just from a perspective of me being a female.
Awesome. Awesome. I'm sure that translates to other occupations as well. It's good advice. One of our student athletes sent in a specific question for you, Monica. She asked, I'm just going to read it to you. Can you talk about your experiences working toward leadership positions as a Black woman in a white, male-dominated field? And what advice do you have for younger women serving in similar spaces?
That's a good question. I just say, be yourself. Like, so many times we go in as women, as African-American women or as non-African-American women, and we try to become that individual organization or fit into that organizational culture, not being who you are. And it just becomes so much harder, I found, just to do that. Just come in, bring what you have, your skills, knowledge, and abilities, your talent, and bring that to the table. Because when you don't do that, then you create a organizational culture that's really not really a representation of you. But come in, be yourself, bring your skills, knowledge, and abilities, and that should be enough for you.
Well, Monica, you're a trailblazer, and we all admire your strength and your confidence and your determination to be a leader and to protect the communities that you served. It's just so impressive. I'm curious, have you seen the role of women in law enforcement change during your career?
Well, I've seen it change in the sense of, I think, more confidence. You see coming from younger individuals and women as they come in and start the job. But I would say we definitely don't have enough in leadership positions, in higher up leadership positions. I see more women that come in that be able to, as I mentioned, I'm seeing it now more than ever before, just be themselves as opposed to trying to become something that they're not in the organization to fit in per se. But again, not enough at the leadership level and not enough in the command levels in organizations in law enforcement. And that's not just my organization, that's all organizations.
Yeah. And I'm sure that women like you who have been in leadership positions do a lot of mentoring, do a lot of communicating with other women to help bring them along. And that is also so important, so that as a student athlete had asked, so the younger women who aspire to do what you do can see that you can succeed and that you can love what you're doing and provide a great service to society in general. So thank you very much for being such a great role model for these people. So let's talk about academics a little bit. You earned a doctorate degree from St. Regis University in strategic leadership. What led you to study leadership, and how has that course of study kind of influenced you in your life and in your work?
Well, I would again go back to really just what I saw at Pitt. I mean, I saw leaders at Pitt when I was in there. Of course, I saw leaders in the military when I was in there. So it was just kind of like an automatic thing. And I will say I had a family member that had mentioned it to me as well, who's also a leader, Dr. William McLean. But it was something that I had already seen, again, at Pitt and in armed forces. So it was kind of like just an easy progression into that. And of course, in my career field as a leader for now over 20 years. So it was something that I just think that it was just, I had to do it. It was just there. It was like nothing I thought about when I heard about the program, when it was discussed with me, when I looked at the syllabus, when I actually had a chance to go to the school and just meet some of the instructors. It was like, yes. And Regent University is Pat Robertson's school. So it's a Christian school. So again, it kind of ties back into, again, my family, the way I was raised, the environment I was raised in. So it just was automatic.
Yeah. Well, talking about that, you have said that your spirituality has enabled you to connect with so many positive influences in your life. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, almost definitely. Even started with my adopted mother. I remember seeing her even as a little child at my church in Durham, North Carolina when I was there, Jesus House of Prayer, but I think it's since changed to another church. I remember seeing her like preaching in the pulpit, and I was like, wow, she can preach. But I remember her not having a lot of opportunities. What she did, she started going to nursing homes, and she would preach on Saturdays, and she would take me there with her to prisons on Sundays and would preach there. And I think it's still like one of the ministries that's still named after her, Ecclesiastes Hockaday ministry in Durham, North Carolina. So I remember just seeing that, and it was that leadership, that drive was something that just made it easier for me to see, if my mother can do it, that's something that I could easily do.
Sure.
Just being a leader and even finding different ways of doing things when there may be some roadblocks there.
Yeah.
So
yeah, the faith carries you through.
Yes, and then just at Pitt, I think I was able to connect with people there at Pitt because of that faith and that driving force that I didn't know was driving me couldn't see, but I just knew it was there. That faith just kind of took me there and got me in the space of the correct people and in the environment with the right people that kind of pushed me there. From high school, same people at Pitt, the same individuals, even in the military, the same individuals connect me with some of the same things, track and field, that I had did previously. And then even my jobs, like law enforcement, like you have an opportunity to change so many people's lives. You just don't even realize people come up to you and ask you so many questions or are dealing with so many issues, and you're just able to be there and have to have the right thing to say, and sometimes people just think about law enforcement from the aspect of fighting crime, but you're a social worker. You deal with a lot of different things, like people at their worst times. So you have an opportunity to either say the right thing or the wrong thing, and that can change somebody's life.
Sure. Very good. Sure. Very good. Well, in addition to all of your tremendous professional accomplishments, you have said that your proudest achievement is your son, Anthony Crawley Jr. Yes. So tell us about Anthony, and tell us a little bit about how you were able to balance being a great mom with all of these professional responsibilities that you had.
Yes. My son, I'd say he keep me honest. Yes, Anthony, he's now 24. So if I say it wrong, he's going to be very upset with me. But he's just that kind of guy. I always say, if you meet him and you don't like him, there's something wrong with you. That's it. Yeah, he's a kind-hearted guy. He's just one of those guys that he just graduated in 2019 from college. He was an athlete. He played football. He ran track, but I didn't really want to force track on him, even though I thought he was probably better in track than football, but I didn't want to force that on him. So he's a worker. He just has a kind heart about him. So it was interesting just being a single parent for the most part of his life, and being able to just show him different things about just living, like just making the right decisions, just doing things with moral ethics and integrity. And sometimes that's tough for kids to understand when they're younger, but I think I can see some of the fruits of my labor now, because sometimes he'll come back to me and say, certain things like, I'm glad you said that, or that was right. You were right, Mom. But he's one of those guys that just, he's a good kid. I always say, even though he's an adult, man, he's a good kid. So he had an opportunity to see me studying. He had an opportunity to kind of see how I just juggled work and going to school as well. So I always say, actually, when I first started my master's, he was like in my stomach. So I always used to let him know that you have no choice but to go and at least get an education.
Yeah, that's right.
If you do nothing else.
That's right. That's right. So Monica, if you think back on your experiences at Pitt, can you talk a little bit about the role that you think your experiences at Pitt have played in your life's journey? Were there things that you experienced at Pitt or that you learned at Pitt that have stood the test of time and have helped you going forward?
Oh, I definitely would say just the structure, organizational, the leadership that the organization showed me, just the whole athletic department, because that's where I spent most of my time as a student athlete. You had great leaders there. You was forced to have a structure, and it wasn't pushed down your throat, but you knew you had to do it. Because if you did, you wouldn't have succeeded. You definitely wouldn't have succeeded as an athlete, and you surely wouldn't have succeeded as a student. So you just had to know how to multitask. And that's something that Pitt taught me how to do, to multitask and just to be a leader and stay focused.
Very good. If there are Pitt female student athletes listening into this conversation today, do you have any words of wisdom for them?
I would say, like I mentioned earlier, just make sure wherever you go, whatever you decide to do, never let anybody stop you. Stay focused on whatever it is your path that you would like to do as a career or as an athlete. If there's something that you really want to do, no matter what type of obstacles that you may face, you just make sure you stay focused on whatever it is that you want to do, and make sure that you put forth 100% of an effort. Sometimes people want results, but they don't want to put forth the effort. Make sure you put forth 100% effort, and you work hard, and whatever it is that you're trying to do, whatever it is you're trying to achieve, you will achieve it.
Very good. So this is Women's History Month. And so thinking of Women's History Month, are there any messages you'd like to convey to the listeners?
I would just say for all women, just be good mothers, be good wives if you're married, and be yourself. You can do both. Like you can be a wife, you can be a mother, and you can still have a career. Don't think that you have to sacrifice one for the other. For adults, for student athletes, be yourself as a student athlete, whoever you are, not someone else, not who someone else wants you to be. You be that female that you are, and bring everything that you have to the table whenever you step in the room, or on the field, or on a court, or on a track.
Monica, you've had a remarkable journey in your life so far, and I'm sure you have a lot of great things going forward in the future for yourself. But we really admire everything that you've accomplished. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. You're an inspiration to all of us. We're so proud of you, and we wish you continued success and happiness. And I'd also like to say to everyone that joined us for this conversation with Dr. Monica Hockaday, thank you for joining us.
And thank you for having me. Hail to Pitt.
Hail to Pitt.